what's this about? This is really difficult territory. Talking about inclusion, talking about assessment. I kind of think you could put just inclusive, there's so many powerful myths around. We have to assess things by exams because we were assessed by exams. But, when I was assessed by exams, there was no such thing as Twitter. Now, we have lots of different ways of assessing, and in Plymouth, we even use Twitter for nurses. They're being assessed through how do they contact their patients, and of course we contact patients through social media and things like that these days, and they've incorporated that into assessment. But we developed an inclusive assessment ambition, so aims about fairness and accessibility and every student having that equal opportunity, and to engage students, because most students just do the assessment rather than actually getting involved and learning from it. So this whole thing about assessment for learning rather than assessment for grades and marks. And we have to educate students. That's really crucial, because they expect us to be in control, us to give marks, and they just do it and lie on their backs. Actually, we want that student engagement and progress and learning. So authentic, sorry this isn't good language, but work-related, meaningful, that replicate real-world challenges. So as an example, history, traditionally history, they would set an assignment, you'd go to the library, you'd get 24 books out, and then you'd write your essay at the last minute overnight and then hand it in at midnight. Nope, that sounds familiar, yeah? Now they have to go to the museum, which is open 9 till 5, and maybe find an artifact that relates to what they're about to write. They have to find something that relates to it, and then they do write an essay, but they relate it to maybe, curatorial work, in the museum. So there's more meaningful. International politics, before they might write an essay, and now, to give you an example, an assessment might be to write an abstract for a conference, then to do a presentation, as they would do like here, and then reflect on their practice. Not every time, but rather than 12 essays a year, looking at assessments that are far more related to what they're going to do. Easy in engineering, easy in maths, easy in nursing, but we've really focused on things like history, social sciences, business, to make it more meaningful so they actually engage. We developed this model because you've got words and words. But so we got this feed-in, so the whole feed-in process, design, preparation, preparing students, can they look at past papers, etc. Can they look at past presentations with annotations by staff? Then midway reviews, and we've got some really interesting research emerging how peer review, student-to-student assessment, midway increases marks by a grade. So because staff say to me, I've got 360 students in my cohort, I can't give everybody midway review. I say, fine, don't. Get students to do it using the assessment and marking criteria. I've got academics who get students to mark their own work before they give it in. So they say what they feel they should get to it. The first thing is talking about, I know you were talking yesterday, does your assessment align to your learning outcomes? Students often say the assessment had nothing to do with what we did in class. Why not? And then the range of assessment methods, are they Are they varied? You know, and do they relate to work? And will there be fewer modifications for disabled students? So the other thing is that improved design, you need well-written and clearly structured questions. One of the first sessions that I did, it's really interesting. This academic said to me, well, of course, I want my students to first of all work out what I'm asking them to do. And I'm thinking, what? You know, no. You know, part of the game of assessment is writing these questions that are confusing. So they have to work out what I want. And I'm going, no. Yeah. And it's really interesting because we also get into kind of whole cultural issues. This was an international member of staff from different country who, you know, did have that kind of culture. Whereas I've got staff from Bulgaria who can't believe that we do exams because, of course, there are only oral exams in Bulgaria. There are no written exams. In Italy, there's far more written exams and oral exams. So, you know, we have a whole international input to how we assess. If we were assessing, managing and developing yourself. So rather than thinking about an essay, you know, what we try to do here, the first column is, you know, maybe they could do a reflective journal, they could do a wiki or a website or an e-journal. What this page is about getting people to think about other ways to assess. So it could be a poster presentation, whatever. So, scheduling, that's really important to stop these bottlenecks. I got feedback from students saying, I live in Penzance, so that's 70 miles away from the university, and I've got a family, and I've got 4 lots of group work. How am I going to meet with all my group, the different groups, when they may be staying in Plymouth? You know, we've got to be clear about making sure that we actually timetable our assignments and our assessments throughout the year. Lots of preparation for students. How do I know what 85% looks like? You know, because on the Moodle, you'll have examples of past work that are annotated, examples of past marking. You might have, I know one academic gets students when they're coming to the last year, 3rd, 4th, 5th year. At the beginning, they'll get groups of students to mark past work using the assignment criteria, because that way he says he can get students to see, well, how do I know the difference between the stages? What is it expecting? And then they have a debate about, oh, I gave that mark 30% and somebody else gave it 70%. So lots of peer review, encourage students to assess each other, work together. Some interesting research about where students collaborate, their marks are higher. Because they explore things, rather than this competitive dog eat dog, I want to get a better mark than you. We need to encourage academics to develop a community of learning rather than this competitive. Because I think this is a key question. So how do we educate students to work with marking, grading criteria when writing assignments or revising for exams? Students increasingly are using assessment criteria for essays, but maybe not for when they're revising for exams. So it's about introducing them in induction. I've just picked 4 programs that we've worked a lot with, targeted intervention, and you can see over 3 years how their marks, I'll come back to that one in a minute, have really increased across assessment and feedback. Whether we like it or not, senior management really look at these data sets and judge programs on these data sets. Now, business management did come from a lower level, but again, huge impact, you know, if they actually work on it. And these 4 programs all completely were happy to restructure their programs and really look at at how they do things. And as far as assessment and feedback, you know, the student satisfaction scores really rose, because we need evidence. We need to show that we have impact.